Welcome everyone to Inclusion, What Parents Can Do. This is part 2, Related Services in a Remote Setting. So now let's talk a little bit about SPAN, for those of you who are not familiar with us. Since 1987, families in New Jersey and beyond have made SPAN for support and resources. Today, SPAN's projects and programs for parents of children from birth to age 26 and for women of childbearing age have expanded from a kitchen table to over national, regional, and local programs funded by government agencies, state, federal, and local, foundations, and fee-for-service contracts. These programs cover education, health and mental health, human services, child care, and child welfare. Our mission is to empower and support families and inform and involve professionals interested in the healthy development and education of children and youth. Our foremost commitment is to children and families with the greatest need due to disability, special health, mental health care needs, poverty, discrimination based on race, ethnicity, gender, language, immigrant or homeless status, involvement in the child welfare or juvenile justice systems, geographic location, or other special circumstances. This training series is presented to you by the START Engaging Parents of Students with Disabilities in Schools project. START EPSD is a Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, and SPAN Parent Advocacy Network. We offer programs and services that support the engagement of families to improve outcomes for students, including developing and sustaining special education, parent advisory, and support groups in communities and school districts. Through workshops, regional meetings, and parent leadership development activities, we help parents and parent leaders to become informed and active participants in their child's education, to partner with educators in improving educational programs for students with disabilities, particularly in the area, to start and strengthen special education parent advisory groups or parent support groups, and to increase effective family engagement to improve special education programs, policy, and practices in communities. Now, please allow me to introduce the members of the START EPS team that are here today. All of us are parent group specialists on the START project. In addition, I are co-directing the project. In addition to the members of the START team, Lauren Agaratis is also a and worked hard with us on this to put this together. Lauren works at SPAN as a curriculum developer for the Special Education Volunteer Advocates, or SAVOR project. She's also the state coordinator for Family Voices New Jersey and central coordinator for the Family to Family Health Information Center. To connect with us and the rest of our team, please visit our webpage. Tatiana?
Thank you, Debbie. Good evening, everyone. This is Tatiana DeGrossa, and along with Debbie Esposito, I'm co-directing the START Engaging Parents of Students with Disabilities in Schools project. Thank you all very much for joining us again this evening. Now, to learn a little bit more about you, please take a brief poll about your role in joining tonight's session. Okay, let me launch the poll. Please respond, select one. I'm attending today's session as a parent, caregiver, a classroom instructor, or paraprofessional, a related services professional, other school staff, or a community. I see many of you already responded. I'll just give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm closing the poll. Here are the results. Okay. Oops. All right, it seems as the majority of you, 67% on today's session, are parents and caregivers, 13% are related services professional, and 7% of you are belong to each category: classroom instructor or paraprofessional, other school staff, and community partner. Thank you for responding. It's nice to see such a wide representation. Next, we would like to find out what brought you here tonight. What questions or concerns motivated you to join this training? that you are hoping to get answers to. Please take a minute to share with us your thoughts and hopes for this session by writing a sentence or two in the questions box, or feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself to speak. What are you looking for out of this session today? Do you have specific questions that you would like us to address? Are you looking for general information, for tips, guidance? We would like to know so we are able to better meet your needs and give you the most, bring to you the most relevant and current information that you need. Okay, I see some answers are coming in. Yes, Amanda's sharing that she's looking for general information and information about compensatory services. That's great, Amanda, because we will be discussing compensatory services tonight. General information and guidance, yes, you can never get enough information, right? And a lot of things coming out every day that we need to be aware of and up to date on. Somebody else chiming in and saying, I always like to hear what is on the minds of parents so we can best meet the needs of families and children. So it sounds like this comment comes from a school professional, which is great. We love collaboration and mutual exploration of ideas. And the last one, I would like to build on what I learned last week. Terrific, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us again. Let us look at our goals for tonight's training.
Tatiana, I think I did see a hand raised. Was there somebody who wanted to unmute themselves?
Thank you, Debbie. I'm trying.
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Hello, it's Nayara. Yes, Nay. It is shorter. Well, one of the things that I'm here for, like I'm here as a mother. I just graduated as a SAVA.
Congratulations.
You know, thank you. And I just like trying to get information, but it's like for personal use and how to help others, because with this whole pandemic and we don't know how it will affect the future, right? Like as far as like teaching or, it's just like, as a parent, like, and my son has an IEP and has all these services that right now is kind of like on hold. Just trying to find out like how it should look like. Does it make sense? Like, what does it look like to be home, remote learning, having an IEP, and having those sort of like speech, OT, like how it would look like now that we are home. Because
Okay.
for me, oh, it works. Yeah, I'm a mom, I'm a teacher, I'm a speech therapy, I'm an OT, I'm wearing a lot of hats. But I also want to know, like, is that how it should be? Like, what should I be looking for? That's kind of like, I don't know if I'm expressing myself right, but it's just.
Well, I think you are, and I hope that we'll be able to answer. I know we'll be able to answer at least some of your questions, and I hope we'll be able to answer most of them. But I think we understand exactly where you're coming from. I think we're all pretty much in the same boat, or at least many of us are. Tatiana, would you like to talk about the goals a little bit?
Sure. I do see there is another.
I was going to say, was there somebody else?
Yes, I'm trying to unmute this person. I'm afraid we might be trying to unmute at the same time. Paridi, can you be able to unmute yourself and share your thoughts with us? All right, she can jump in. She's able to unmute herself, but yes, let's talk a little bit about the goals for tonight. We will explain state and federal guidance around related services. We will discuss how related services facilitate inclusion, explain how related services can be provided during remote learning, and learn what parents can do. Sort of all of those things that Naira just shared that she has questions about and would like to find out from tonight's session. And many of you, I'm sure, sharing her motivations and behind their attendance tonight. So let us begin our presentation and learning together. Michelle?
Thanks so much, Tatiana. So, you guys who were here last week, and if you weren't, let's just do a quick review. So COVID-19 has not changed a student's right to least restrictive environment, but the way the schools deliver services is going to look different from district to district and from county to county. So whatever placement your child's IEP says that they should be in during in-person learning is the same placement during remote learning. COVID has not changed how general education systems operate. Changes require school systems to determine how they will maintain least restrictive environment for each student in the context of how they're operating, not if. The key is communication, and prompt communication is best. If there's a problem, don't wait to talk to the district or wait too long to schedule an IEP meeting. Do it as soon as possible. Okay, so Tatiana's going to post in the question section a handout that is called Questions and Answers on Providing Services to Children with Disabilities During the Coronavirus Disease 2019 outbreak. And this was from March 2020. This guidance addresses a lot of the questions, and like your child's IEP, IDEA, none of that changed due to COVID. Compensatory services can be provided as a makeup session if missed services are not provided by the district in accordance to the IEP. And SPAN has created a tracking form to help parents keep track of missed services. So let's take a minute, and if I say the words related services, let's take a minute and put in the question area what that means to you. So when you hear the word related services, what does that mean?
Okay, I see a lot of acronyms coming in. Occupational therapy, speech therapy, IEP, individualized education plan, a lot more of OT, PT, occupational and physical therapy, behavioral supports, speech transportation. Good. Counseling, okay, something different, one-on-one paraprofessional therapies. ESY, somebody's adding ESY or extended school year. Let's find out if they're right.
Wow, this is a really sharp group because yes, you guys are. I mean, when we look at related services, it's everything from physical therapy, behavioral services, transportation. You guys said a lot of these. Typically, think of related services, they usually say the top three, which are speech, OT, and PT. But other lesser known services are the ones that's now coming up on the screen. SPAN has a related services handout, and the link is going to be posted in the question section. Now note, things like sensory integration, that needs to be provided by a specially certified OT. There's also social skills that wasn't mentioned, that's also part of this. As far as related services, and some sensory integration in addition to OT. Some students are sensory seekers, and they need that overstimulation, or some are avoiders and so there's, even though in each group, in each subject here, there's lots of different ways that it can be looked at. So I'm glad though you guys knew a lot of the related services, which is great. So I just also want to emphasize that behavioral health and mental health services are available through school districts also. So that is part of related services. So it's important to remember that if your child needs or is seeking any of those services. Now, one of the least known related service categories are services, related service categories are services for parents, for us to assist our kids. So when my son began doing PECS, as an example, which is a communication system, it's similar to the picture that's here in the video, except he had actual cards. So it was important, though, for me to learn how to help him with this communication. I wanted to make sure that I had the skills so that I can follow through with what the teachers were doing. The problem was there was only one training that was coming up in that area, during that time, and it was in Baltimore. And the type of training is best to be done in person. So I asked my district if they would cover the fee for the training, and they did. There are things like this that come up. That's something that parents should feel empowered to ask about also, to make sure that we're getting the training that we need for our kids so that we can help our kids best. So we're just going to take a quick moment to review. So special education and related services still must be delivered during remote learning. I can't emphasize that enough. Besides the big three therapies that I mentioned, speech, OT, and PT, there are a lot of other related services that are still available to eligible students, even during COVID. Mental health services are related services, and parent training can be included in the IEP. So Tatiana is going to see if you guys have any questions in the question box. And at any time, you can put questions in the question pane. You don't have to wait until we have a certain time to discuss them. Tatiana, are there any questions?
Not at this time, but also remember that in addition to typing your questions in the questions box, you can always raise your hand and unmute yourself to speak. No worries. We will have a couple more opportunities to ask, but I think we have one. So here, Jeanette is asking, to my understanding, IEP, Individualized Education Program, should not be changed during COVID, only adjustment and accommodations to the current IEP. I believe she wants to know if this is correct.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if I would, well, you're saying yes, Debbie. I mean, I think something needs to be changed.
I mean, what I'm saying is that the IEP still stands. Now, you might want to meet if the way that your goals may need to be delivered might change. I mean, I'm sorry, the way that your goals may be addressed may change. Like you said, the delivery may change. The IEP still needs to be followed, even during COVID. But since schools, well, yeah, like you said, but since schools, the way we're delivering instructional services have changed, that also goes for the way the IEP services are delivered.
And we're going to even talk about that a little bit more too, as far as addressing that. So
she would like to clarify that when IEP was written, it was written for, with in-person instruction or services in mind. And now the services, her school district is operating on the remote environment. So I think we will talk a little bit about more later during the presentation, so hang on. And as we actually next, we will, Stephanie will be talking about how the related services can be provided remotely. Stephanie?
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, yes, hi. You can hear me now, right? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, I will be discussing remote related services. So to successfully implement related services in remote learning, we have to start by looking at the IEP. First, start by reviewing the goals and the student's needs, taking into consideration the complexity of the needs and disability. As a team, you want to ask, how can the student be included? Work with the child study team to identify goals that can be addressed at home. There must be consensus from the IEP team, which includes the family and student. The intervention must include a realistic implementation plan that takes the child's environment and accommodations into consideration. So how can related services be best provided remotely? Let's take a closer look at some of the suggestions. First, address access. Beyond technology access, some students may need closed captioning or audio description, perhaps different color or contrast. You want to think about universal design for learning. Orient students. Student orientation ensures that they have the tools and skills needed to participate in inclusive sessions. Next, have a routine. Students will follow the routine of entering the session, turning the camera on, muting the microphone, etc. Set expectations. All students need to know what to expect in the session. Be consistent. Consistency in having the same day, same time, same length of session will help include all students. Encourage participation by using tools like polls so everyone does the activity together. My son's math teacher will often give control of the screen to my son so that as his peers are answering questions and he has the responsibility of typing in the answer. He enjoys having this role and it provides for a lot of peer-to-peer interaction as well as helping to facilitate his own communication. Using the child's strengths. A reading strength could be hyperlexia and could benefit from oral or written prompts to enhance comprehension and communication with peers, which also enhances inclusion. And also embedding into daily activities. We know that children with delays need about 100 exposures to an activity. So you want to practice. And when we think about those daily routines, daily activities such as mealtime can be reinforcing, or maybe speech. They can implement or incorporate some of their speech strategies during mealtime with putting things on the table and naming the items on the table, or with OT, utilizing some strategies by using utensils. So these are some ways that you can embed it into the daily activities. What's most important is about thinking out of the box, especially during this time. So let's talk about how related services can be more inclusive during remote learning. First, think about maybe students participating with a group instead of alone. The therapist can list supplies needed beforehand, and students with similar abilities can do a project together. Speech therapists can do a breakout room during remote instruction. And therapists can create breakout rooms for OT or PT activities, which can be done together. I wanted to talk about one parent in particular, a parent in Monmouth County, down in the district of Monmouth County. Her name is Cindy, and recently she was sharing with me a story on Jacob. PT, physical therapy, one of the hurdles for her son in remote learning. Jacob was meeting virtually with his physical therapist twice a week for half-hour sessions in the living room, so doing virtual therapy in his living room. It was a frustrating situation all around. The therapist wasn't able to effectively work with Jacob. Jacob was frustrated with his session, and Cindy, the mom, was feeling helpless watching Jacob struggle each week with virtual PT, which I'm sure many of us can relate to. With the willingness of his therapist to think out of the box, and also with the approval of the district, they were able to move their half-hour on the computer in the living room twice a week sessions to the great outdoors for a full hour, one time a week session on the playground. And the difference has been amazing. Jacob is engaged, he's working hard, and he's getting what he needs. And there's a few pictures of Jacob with his PT at the playground at their school, which is just wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about how mental health services can be done virtually as well. COVID and school closures have been traumatic for many students. Students' lives have been disrupted, and some have lost friends and family. There's been an uptick in racial incidents, bullying, and suicide. There must be a focus on social and emotional learning for students. Here are some strategies of how you can get the support virtually. Let's talk about you could move in-school counseling appointments and switching them over to Zoom and doing it online. Teachers should be reaching out to parents about detecting early warning signs, encouraging virtual social opportunities, and schools and families may turn to outside resources such as Perform Care. Every school district in New Jersey was required to submit their state's reopening plan in the summer. Part of the reopening plan was for each district to include information on addressing students' behavioral and social emotional needs and the interventions both inside and outside of the school environments. So I do recommend that you ask your district to review the plan and see what supports they're providing to students. Here's an example of one school district, Hamilton School District down in Atlantic County, that developed a really fantastic wealth of resources for families. And as you can see, they start by, you can click on, there's there's acceptance and equity, there's Corona resources. And then as you scroll down further, you'll see there's resources available in Spanish. There's things there for the child study team, special ed for parents, classroom environment resources. I mean, really, you name it, it's there. And also what's included, and I believe Tatiana will be dropping a link as well, is a link to a YouTube video from the district, really talking about the experience and the reason and the catalyst for wanting to create such a comprehensive selection of information for parents. And I really think it's great because it took into consideration the social emotional needs of the students as well as the families. And I think it was a very proactive effort. So I encourage you, when you have a moment, to take a look at some of these resources and take a look at how this district really came together to create something that showed a real level of care and concern for their students and for the families and for the staff as well. And I think it's important that you take this and, again, and going back to your district to find out what are the resources that are available. And you could always provide this district as an example of one of those that's really doing it right.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Yes, sorry to interrupt, but I also wanted to give a shout out to Marilyn Stecker, Director of Special Education Services at the Hamilton Township School District in Atlantic County, who is actually on this training session with us today. And I wanted to express gratitude to our long partnership and valuable collaborative relationship we had throughout the years. And we love to see the work that you do in your school district, and I hope that others will emulate your initiatives and to bring it to their staff, families, and students. I just wanted to give another shout out to Marilyn Stecker, who's representing Hamilton Township School District in Atlantic County on this training tonight.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much for calling in. And yes, thank you. That it's really, as we were preparing for this presentation tonight, our team was really blown away by the video and the website and all the links, and just really great information. And we love when we see districts that are really doing it right. And it's just a great way for parents to go back to their own school districts to advocate and show an example of a best practice. So thank you so much. So let's talk about behavioral supports and positive behavior intervention systems and remote instruction. So all students will benefit from consistent language of the school's PBIS expectations or values across physical and online settings. Behaviors must be maintained for all remote activities, whether they are teacher-led instruction, independent work, one-on-one work, or small group activities. Think about behavior expectations during remote learning. Students need to know if they are supposed to answer orally or mute, if they're supposed to be using the raise hand, little emoji there, staying on camera, using the chat function. For direct instruction, teachers must explain the information rather than just post, and that can leave some students feeling frustrated or maybe left out. And just like an in-person class, behavioral supports must be individualized based on the needs of the student. When we were reviewing this presentation for tonight, we were talking about the idea of that staying on camera, and I mentioned that I know of a couple of parents whose children have said, I'm very distracted when I have the self in class. So, as a parent, parents have reached out and had meetings with child study team, or just to kind of give a heads up to the teacher to say, listen, distracting for my child, so she would prefer not to have the camera on. And that's, again, about figuring out what works best for your child. So I just wanted to mention that. Also, the district has a wealth of resources. Everything from your BCBAs, which is your board certified behavior analysts, behaviorists, guidance counselors, to name a few. Make sure that you're tapping into those resources. You're looking for maybe some additional support for your child. And now we'll take a moment to answer some questions that you may have. I know I provided a lot of information here, so so just take a moment and we'll have an opportunity to answer some questions.
This was fantastic, Stephanie, and we do have a couple of questions already coming in, but feel free to type in additional questions for us. So the first question, can the social skills service be continued, for example, lunch bunch during remote learning?
I'm sorry, I had a bad connection for a moment. Can you repeat it?
Oh, absolutely, no problem. So the question is, can the social skills service be continued, for example, lunch bunch during remote learning?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of that kind of small group activity. Also, if that's something that's included in your child's IEP for social skills as an IEP goal, certainly that is something you could talk about. I personally, in the spring, because it was so isolating in spring, I think we're in a better position right now with this new school year. But in the springtime, when really not as much remote learning was going on, I personally reached out to the superintendent in my district and I asked if we could implement a lunch bunch. Our district also does a lot of stuff with Play Unify and Project Unify with Special Olympics, and I thought it'd be a nice idea also to have almost like a Play Unify or a Project Unify type of session on Zoom as well. So these were some things that we put out there, because again, we didn't want to stop the social skills aspect, or we didn't want that to hinder our child from making progress again on their IEP goals.
So Stephanie, just to be clear, when you did your lunch bunch, that was a virtual lunch bunch, right? You said you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to be. I just wanted to be clear.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. It was virtual. Yeah, and again, it's back to that kind of small group type of thing that you can do. So yeah, and that's something you could even reach out to the guidance counselor, your school's building principal, or the guidance counselor, or the case manager to talk about doing something like that.
Great, thanks, Stephanie.
Oh.
And now Michelle. Oh, I'm sorry, Tatiana. Were there more questions?
There is another question, if I might. So, for students who opt to stay virtual and district is offering virtual learning with virtual related services, or a hybrid of coming in to meet with the related services provider, but the parent is not taking advantage and student struggling virtually. What are some things that the school team, let me just go back. A lot of questions are coming in. So what are some things that the school team can do when it's too much out of the parent's comfort zone to have student attend in school?
Well, I think it goes back to, I know SPAN, and particularly Michelle, does a really, really nice presentation on position versus interests, if you ever get a chance to catch it or get some information on it. And I think it's about understanding the parent's position and understanding the rationale and the reason why the parent is hesitant, and then trying to figure out how you can meet halfway. I mean, let's look at the situation that the story I referenced earlier with Cindy and her son Jacob. Cindy has opted to keep her child fully remote. So she wasn't prepared or comfortable with having her child go into the building to receive his related services. So the compromise, again, I thought it was a great compromise and a real out of the box idea, was again, doing it outdoors on school property, but at the playground. So again, when we talk about inclusion, we also have to think that inclusion extends beyond the school building. It can be in the community. It can be a community-based inclusive activity. It could be something where, again, understanding the parent's concern and working as a team to come up with something that could work. Thinking out of the box.
Very, very good. And somebody's asking what are our thoughts on virtual clubs, for example, just what you just were talking about, right? So great opportunities for inclusion and participation in all of those lunch bunch sessions or virtual after school activities, virtual clubs, all great opportunities for students with disabilities and without, to continue that social connection. Another parent, it's interesting, while discussing the possible response to that answer for the parent or recommendations, other parents started chiming in, or participants started chiming in, and this one is from Maria. She's sharing that something that her school has done is that it has been really helpful is providing technology training to parents and making the school guidance counselor and school psychologist available to talk with parents to address student issues and parent issues, ranging from what is going on in the classroom and at home, and to the social with regard to social emotional welfare of students and parents once a week. So maintaining that communication, right? And the little piece that Michelle was talking about earlier about parent training and counseling, those are invaluable.
And it goes back to, you know, I preach this a lot in our conversations. It's about tapping into, there's a lot of really fabulous resources within your child's own school district, and it's really tapping into some of those amazing guidance counselors. They're keeping up to date on everything that's going on. They're also connecting with other guidance counselors to get great resources, and they're a wealth of information. So tapping into the guidance counselors, tapping into your district behaviorists, your district BCBAs, if they're outsourcing, find out, you know, again, if you can just partner with the anyone from the or local community. Are there local community groups that your district also can put you in touch with? You know, really, it's connecting with your district in that way too.
And forget to connect with your CPAG. This is one of those. That's another great resource that's right in your own district. Is to connect with your CPAG and find out what other parents are doing and how they're addressing some of these issues.
Right.
Okay, so now Michelle will talk about what parents can do. Thank you so much for your questions. Keep them coming. We'll have another opportunity.
Thanks, Tatiana. And yeah, I appreciate what you said, Stephanie, also as far as the creating agreement workshops that we do here at SPAN. And anytime, like Debbie said, you connect with your CPAG and they can help you with that also. When you switch, let me say this, when I think most problems with parents in school districts come to communication. So when you kind of switch from talking from your position to what your interest is, the reason why it's motivating you to ask what you're asking, it really changes everything. But to continue with the webinar, so what can parents do? So parents can reinforce what the therapists are doing. You know, if a child is getting therapy and it's not reinforced until the next session, it's like taking a piano lesson and then thinking you can play a concert after one lesson. You know, parents can advocate for parent training when needed. I gave the example earlier with my son with PECS, when the district was able to provide the payment for that training. Remember that parent training can be part of the IEP. Parents can make sure that the child is included in the same activities as the rest of the group. Again, if the child is in an inclusive in-person environment, the same must hold true for remote learning. Examples of fun speech activities for parents to do with their children is going to be provided in the link that Tatiana is sharing. And then also she's going to share a link for some fun OT and PT activities as well. So let's look at compensatory services. So what are they? So compensatory services are generally defined as educational services that a student needs to make up for skills lost because the school district did not provide the services required in the IEP. So, but even if the child did not receive the services that they were supposed to receive because of, say, a school closing, the child's IEP team, and remember, that includes the parent, must make an individualized determination whether and to what extent compensatory services may be needed to make up for any skills that have been lost. So Tatiana is going to put in the chat the link to a handout that parents can use. During when COVID happened, SPAN was putting together a lot of handouts that we not only put together to give to people, but then also for online. So you might be able to find this on our YouTube channel also, a overview of what Tatiana is putting in the chat box, which is also including a letter requesting compensatory services and a log to help you track those services. So it's important for parents to note any regression though during this time. So if you see any regression, note it. If there are any services that are not the related services, that they're not being given or even partially given, you want to make sure to note that as well. All right, so let's do a little activity. All right, so let's pretend someone from the school district said the following to you. So since you've selected virtual instruction for your child, we have to reduce all related services to 1 time per week for 30 days. So would it be appropriate to reduce the amount of related services based on the method of delivery? So in other words, because it's remote, is it appropriate to do that? And explain why you feel that. So if you can put that in the chat, I would appreciate it. What do you think about that? Would it be appropriate for there to be a reduction in related services because we're switching from in-person to remote? And tell me why.
You can always unmute yourself. Remember, you can always unmute yourself to speak. Kelly, sharing no. Same school time, same duration, method doesn't matter. And I see another no, because the IEP doesn't change, just the delivery model. Another no, the services should follow what is written in the child's IEP and not to the extent possible. And also another, it depends on the situation.
Okay.
All
All right,
correct.
thanks so much for sharing those and for you guys participating.
Lots
So
coming in, but mostly no.
mostly no's. Okay, and and I figured that most of you guys would say no. I could understand, some may not know, but the reasons why I do, those are some great responses as to why it shouldn't be. So we need to remember that the IEP decisions that are driven, the IEP decisions are driven by the needs of the individual student, not by the way the district provides instruction. So many districts believe that they can reduce services simply because the student is receiving virtual instructions. That simply is not true. In fact, in many cases, an argument can be made for increasing services. Before participating in these discussions, the parents should ask the district to provide all the data and other information that they will be relying on to make these IEP decisions. It's really important as parents that we look at the data and we ask about the data. Parents should inform them that they require this information to participate in the IEP process. That's how districts are making their decisions on the data, or at least they should be. So you should be getting that same information so that you are an equal member of the IEP team. There must be clear information about the student's progress that supports any reduction in any service. They should also be reminded that at the last IEP meeting, the team determined that the child required these services, and there's no data or any information to support a reduction. If the district admits that they don't have enough staff to provide the service, then it's time to discuss outside providers at the district's expense. I've also seen districts attempt to remove students from their out-of-district placements, and if their parents are selecting virtual instruction, or if the out-of-district placement school only offers virtual instruction. This is not an appropriate way to make placement decisions. As mentioned before, we need to stay laser focused on the needs of the student, not on the district's problems associated with the pandemic. All right, so let's take a minute to review. So, I'm sorry, 1 second. All right, so related services can be provided remotely, and Stephanie gave some great examples of how that can be done. Speech and OT and PT can still be inclusive in remote settings. Other related services in a remote environment can foster more inclusion. And then also parental engagement will result in the best outcomes for the child.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome,
So
Debbie.
Now we're going to do a fun exercise. Tatiana is going to put a link in the chat box, and we're going to move on to a Jamboard. And I'm going to ask you all to give us your input. So if you click on the link, what are some ways your child's been receiving inclusive related services during remote learning? And so we'd like you to click on the text, the icon for a sticky note, the one that's circled in red. If you go over to the left and you click on the sticky note, one will pop up and you can type in your answer. We thought it would be easier this way so everyone's not writing at the same time on the whiteboard. But we'd really love for you to participate. This is kind of a fun way to engage. You may have seen some of your children doing this on their virtual classes. That's kind of where I learned about it, watching my son and seeing what he did in his class. But all you have to do is, like I said, click on the sticky note, and one will pop up, and you can enter your reason. You can enter your response. And what we're asking is, what are some of the ways your child's been receiving inclusive related services? I can see they're starting to come in. Lunch with Zoom friends. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can move that. Yeah, you can move them over. Yeah, once Tatiana's joined. Yeah. So once you've entered your answer, lunch with Zoom friends, that's great. Or Zoom lunch with friends, I'm sorry. Well, same thing, I guess they're your Zoom friends. Remote group learning. And some other answers. Yeah, this is just to indicate where the sticky notes are. If you click on that icon over to the left, Legos. My son used to do Legos all the time. He loved it, and it is a great social activity. Because kids have to ask, they have to take turns. They have to ask to borrow the little guy with the hard hat on. They have to, yeah, they really have to interact with each other. Fully mainstream, but small group learning. Fully mainstream, but small group learning. Great. OG reading. Does anybody know what OG reading is?
Orton Gillingham.
Orton Gillingham? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
You can make that bigger if you want. So there you go. Thank you. See, isn't this fun? Thank you all so much for being willing to try something a little bit different. Inclusive setting, related service provider can, so observations of the generalization of skills learned in the individual session into the inclusive settings. A related service provider can log onto the Google Meet to do the observation. Stephanie, you were talking about something similar to that. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say that. So my son has a behavior improvement plan, a BIP. And so, he was having some behaviors. And so, we've been working on some skills, and I noticed that the BCBA will actually, we're on Microsoft Teams in my district. So she'll call in or whatever. I'm not dating myself. They call in, I don't know, like teaming in, whatever, joining. And I see that she'll be observing. And then what she'll do is she'll observe. And then after, she'll kind of then send a follow-up email to the team, kind of reminding them of how we're implementing some strategies, which I think is great. Also, the speech therapists will do the same thing. They'll kind of drop in, observe, and even, give some pointers or reach back out to me with a couple, give me some feedback on how great, was some of the things that my son is doing. So it's really nice that they're able to take things that they're also doing in those one-to-one settings, like with speech, and being able to generalize it across different settings. So that's really also a great way to foster inclusion as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. I see a lot of folks are playing with the colors. We had fun with that this afternoon too. We
did. We all like the different colors. It's fun.
So great. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint, but if you have some other ideas, you can go ahead and enter them, or you can enter them in the questions pane if that's easier for you, or, if you're more comfortable with that, that's fine. So that pretty much wraps it up for us. I really would like to thank all of you for sharing your evening with us. That'll do it for us. Thank you. Have a good evening.